All right. Good morning, dear friends, and welcome to the Spirit Messiah Spiritual Healing Center. We are a non-denominational spiritual center and respect all religions and spiritual traditions. So please, we're welcome to hear all your thoughts and questions. Before we keep on, let us ask our dear brother Tony to lead us in prayer.
Okay, let us close our eyes. Let us take a deep breath and exhale. Let us ground our feet to Mother Earth and let's give thanks that Mother Earth gives us all these beautiful examples of giving and without asking for anything back. And as we ground ourselves to Mother Earth and we connect on high to all the good coming from God to our crown chakras, and we ask that we open our minds and our thoughts, and that we take these beautiful lessons that will be coming through our brother Brian today. We want to thank all the beautiful teachers that are here, all the healing doctors that are here to work on whoever needs assistance and helps, and whoever's not here that are in our thoughts that need the assistance. I want to give thanks again for another beautiful opportunity that we have here to learn and to grow as we all take another small step towards you, God, and growing and understanding. We ask that you give us the permission to open our study with Brian today. So be it.
Thank you, Brother Tony. So beautiful, right? We just keep step by step. All right, beautiful. So, just a quick recap. BSH is a member of the United States Spiritist Federation, and our spiritual beliefs are based around scientific, philosophical, and religious principles of Spiritism. As Emmanuel Chico Xavier's mentor taught us, knowledge and love are the wings for our spiritual evolutions. That's the reason why our service is divided into two parts. So the first part, we have the speaker sharing findings from remarkable and qualified mediums and spirits. So it's important that we participate since our mentor is already supporting us and our needs while hearing insights from the speaker. Carrying and working these reflections along the week is what will really sustain the energy we are receiving here. The second part is a hands-on healing pass where our mentor will be working with BSH mediums and benefactors. So here we have all the good stuff that's happening as our weekly schedule here, the functions. So on Monday, healing services from 6:30 to 8:30. Tuesday, light ahead at Divine Light from 6:30 to 8. And Wednesday, it's a super healing Wednesday. That's beautiful. Fraternal counseling from 4 to 7, which is beautiful because the times call for healing right now. So that's great. Imagine going from fraternal counseling and then jumping into this new class that's starting this upcoming week called Inner Transformation from 6:30 to 7:30. And then on Thursdays, we continue with our vibration with Joanna Giangi's book, Psychology of Gratitude, from 6:30 to 7:30. And we jump back to Sunday today. We have our morning services. And then later on today, from 5:30 to 6:45, there's a book study from Divine Light, from Chico Xavier and Andre Luis' book, Workers of Life Eternal. It's a beautiful book. And then to top all of that, we do have our daily prayer from Monday through Saturday, 6 p.m. All of these times are Pacific time. And just We have so many opportunities. It's diverse. Find our class or classes would be great. All right. So, since we don't have any more announcements, let us introduce this morning's guest speaker, our beautiful and beloved brother Brian. Brian is the founding member of the Becerra Spiritual Healing Center. At an early age, he could see and communicate with spirits. However, he suppressed his spiritual gifts until a life changing experience caused him to embrace his study of mediumship and healing. In 2005, Brian graduated from Nancy Bradley's Truth and Healing Center as a healing medium. He continued working with her until 2009, and in 2012, Brian began studying mediumship and spiritism with Tanya and Greg Stewart of Brazilian Spiritual Healing. Brian is an environmentalist with over 33 years of experience working with various federal, state, local, and private agencies for the protection of California's environment, citizens, and property. Brian is grateful for the divine opportunities, loving and serving God's will. So with no more here, we introduce our beloved dear brother Brian, and just a quick reminder, make sure we mute ourselves. Thanks.
Thank you, Nora. And thank you, Tony, for the prayer, for setting the stage to what's to come. Let me go ahead and pull up the presentation, share the screen. Okay, you should see the presentation. Do you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, well, today's topic is the Gospel according to Spiritism, Chapter 6, the Consoling Christ. And I got to minimize something here. Okay. Consoling. Serving to comfort someone at a time of grief or disappointment. An action that alleviates the grief, the sense of loss or trouble. It's wonderful how the spirits working with the mediums and Allan Kardec in the 1800s to codify the books, one of them being the Gospel according to Spiritism, how they lay out everything within the Gospel according to Spiritism, because the previous chapter talks about blessed are the afflicted, and it talks about why we are afflicted, how we're afflicted, what's the causes of the affliction. And then the next chapter is how we can overcome these afflictions through a consoling Christ. I'm always fascinated how the lessons are unveiled before we even know it, and in order that they know that we'll understand. And today, we're given Spiritism as a platform that provides the Spirit of truth to talk to us about reminding us of Jesus's teachings and removing that veil for a greater understanding that we're prepared to understand today. So let's go ahead and get into the presentation. We have 3 sections. This is, I believe, one of the, it is the shortest chapter in the gospel, but what I have found in reading the gospel, working with all of you, and also putting together presentations, it doesn't matter how short or how long the chapter is, there's always a wealth of wisdom, a depth of education to be provided to us. And we could talk, because as we know, being philosophical and regarding Spiritism and the Spirit of Truth is one part of the triangle for Spiritism. So we could talk for a long time, and it's wonderful to talk with all of you, and I welcome you to share your comments as the presentation moves forward, because we all learn from each other. And every time we talk about a topic, and if we're following the teachings of Christ and following the truth from the Spirit of truth, we begin to open up more and free ourselves more to consume more of the truth and an understanding of the truth. So please don't hesitate to chime in when something grabs you. And for example, your spirit mentor asking you to share. So we have the easy yoke, the promised consoler, and then as usual, the chapter ends with various spirit teachings. And the focus in this chapter is the coming of the Spirit of truth. So we have the easy yoke. I had the privilege of speaking on this chapter months ago. And I shared the yoke as an understanding of like the yolk of an egg, nourishment. And that was my understanding at the time. But through the presentation and the sharing of others, I got a greater understanding of what the yoke means. And as we know, a yoke is a wooden beam normally used between a pair of oxen or other animals to enable them to pull together on a load that is guided by the farmer. And they work in pairs usually to enable them to handle the load. And they help the farmer to sow the field. So as we go through this presentation, let's think of the farmer as Jesus Christ. And we are the animal that has the yoke around us. And we can be yoked individually or yoked together. And remember the message of when there are more than one, the message or the teachings will come. I forget exactly how it is, but together we're supposed to learn. And together today, we are learning to have a greater understanding of what the yoke is in the promised consoler. So I'm going to read this and then I'm going to play a video. Come unto me, all you who suffer and who are overburdened, and I will comfort you. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me that I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Hey, this is Jared Dees from thereligionteacher.com. If you're feeling overwhelmed, turn to this passage. Remember what Jesus said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Here's the full quote from the Gospel of Matthew. Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. If you feel overwhelmed, if you feel anxious and worried, come to me and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. 3 takeaways from this quote, from this passage from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus is reassuring us, when you feel overwhelmed, first, pray. Come to me, he says. When you feel overwhelmed, pause and pray. Turn to the Lord. Start there. What's next? What else does he say? Turn your stress into service. He says, my yoke is easy. That yoke refers to the way in which an animal would be pulling a plow. The yoke is what's strapped around the shoulders to be able to pull the plow. So the yoke is the service that we give to God, the service that we give to the Lord. That when you're feeling overwhelmed, Turn that stress, that things that you're overwhelmed, and turn it over to God. Give it to God. Remember that Jesus is the one planting the seeds. Jesus is responsible for the outcome of the work that we do in our lives. Turn that stress into service. The stress that you experience, turn it into service. Think about, what is the cause of the stress in my life right now, and how can I make this an opportunity just to serve, to do God's will, and to stop worrying about the outcome that I cannot possibly control. Put it into God's hands. Just take it as an opportunity to serve. So first we're going to pray, and then we're going to take this opportunity to say, God, I'm giving it all to you. I'm going to serve you. I'm not going to stress about the outcome. I'm going to recognize that I am serving you. And then finally, what can we do? Jesus says, learn from me. He's humble, it says. He says, I'm humble and gentle in heart. Learn from Jesus. Stop being the person who has all the answers and learn from the Lord instead. Find comfort in learning from God. So if you're experiencing a time of overwhelm right now, first pray. Think about, what is it that's giving me so much overwhelm? What is giving me so much anxiety? And turn that stress into some service, giving up the outcome to God. And then take some time to know, I'm going to get through this by learning from the Lord, learning from my faith, and not so much feeling like I have all the answers. Jesus says, my yoke is easy, that service is easy, and my burden is light. Take your burdens and give them to God. They are God's burdens now, no longer yours. Pray, serve, learn. Go back to
All right. So pray, yoke, learn, educate, to overcome, to find consolation in faith in the future, and trust in God's justice taught by Christ. That's how we can overcome all types of suffering. Here are just a few: misery, disappointment, didn't get the job you wanted, didn't have that person reciprocate the love that you have for them, physical pain. Maybe you might have a sciatic nerve problem. Maybe you might have cancer. Loss of a loved one, someone who was so dear. Maybe a mentor who you could always turn to is no longer there in this incarnated world that we live in. Sometimes these sufferings can be so heavy and so burdensome that they consume us. They give us anxiety and depression. And these afflictions can become greater than how they started out as, because we feed them. And what Jesus is saying about his yoke, let me lead you. Let me show you the way. The yoke that's around us, he can guide us. He can show us how to get out of the way of our burdens, not focus on the burdens, by turning to another brother and sister who are in need and helping them. Devotion and selflessness. And Jesus's yoke, when observing the law of love and charity, does not constrain us. But if we wish to be in control, like leading a dog on a leash, for example, and the dog is pulling us and telling us where it's going to go, we struggle and the dog struggles. But when we work together, the dog and the human, things seem to flow a lot easier. The dog enjoys its walk. We enjoy the walk. We get to see nature, enjoy nature, smell nature. Jesus wants to lead us into happiness. He wants to help us see all that life provides, not just in this world, but beyond this world. For the yoke can bring us happiness and help us understand who we are, why we are, and where we come from. And it's as simple as giving it over to the Lord. And through that, we can find out of knowing the future, understanding reincarnation, understanding why we have these afflictions. And Spiritism, the Gospel according to Spiritism, and the Spirit's book, and Heaven and Hell, and the Medium's book in Genesis, be the Spirit of Truth, working with spirits, working with mediums, working with Allan Kardec to codify the books, is providing us the education. And we're further being educated by others like Divaldo Franco and Chico Xavier, who communicated with the spirits and allowed the spirits to write through them to tell more that we need to know. Because the Spirit of Truth wants to keep giving and keep providing the truth, taking that veil away of Jesus's teaching so that we can truly understand the message today. And we have to trust. We have to let go. Trust the yoke. Trust Christ's leadership. We put it in God's hands. We can feel secure. We need to forgive not only ourselves, but our brothers and sisters that may have not responded in the way that we wanted. We need to let go, liberate, give it to Jesus. He'll show us the way. He'll take us out of our misery. We'll no longer be weary because we will find comfort. I know all of you have, at one point in your life, have had a struggle. And you've turned to a friend. Next thing you know, that friend is in need. Could be how to respond to something. Could be they don't have rent and you can help them with rent. Or they haven't eaten, they don't have food in the fridge and you can provide them food to fill their stomach. And you see their response to your assistance. And it can lighten you, make you happy to see that they're happy. And next thing you know, you're not thinking about your situation, your burden, and you freed yourself of what was weighing you down. And next thing you know, the answer to your situation, the solution comes because you've let go of it. And through service to a brother and sister, by giving oneself, selfless, the answers come. Love and charity, what a wonderful duty. And they help build our faith, our love, our faith and love in God, our faith and love in Jesus, and faith and love in our neighbor. So the next section talks about the promised consoler, the Spirit of Truth, and Spiritism as the platform for the Spirit of Truth. I'll read this. If you love me, keep my commandments, and I will pray to my Father, and he will send you another consoler so that he may remain with you forever. The Spirit of Truth, whom the world cannot receive because it neither sees him nor knows him. But as for you, you will know him because he will remain with you and will be among you. But the Consoler, who is the Holy Spirit, whom my Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will enable you to remember everything that I have said to you. I believe that all of you have perhaps had the same experience, but maybe in different ways, where you meet someone who just seems to lighten your world, who just brings you so much happiness. It could be a friend. It could be a soulmate. It could be a teacher. But let's think about being in love. You meet someone and you're in love and you're on that pink cloud. Nothing seems to impact that pink cloud. Everything is wonderful. It's like utopia. But there might be red flags. You don't see them because you're on that pink cloud. Everything's wonderful, but on the exterior, you have friends that do see those red flags. And one might try to say to you, this is what I see, but you ignore them because you're on this pink cloud. You just can't believe that, yeah, that's there, that red flag. I feel so good. How can that be? And you ignore it and you go further into the relationship and another red flag pops up and another friend tries to tell you, but you're not listening to them because you're still feeling that lightness, that wonderfulness, the excitement of something new. So finally it happens more and more until you start tripping and you're going, man, I don't feel as good as I did last time or the time before. And then you start thinking about those friends you might have said something, and then all of a sudden you begin to realize, yeah, they're right about those red flags. And you open yourself up to the truth. Well, at the time of Jesus's teachings, a lot of humans were incarnated at the time, could only grasp so much knowledge, the education that he provided. And Jesus knew that. So Jesus spoke in parables and allegories. Hopefully that it will penetrate some crack in their soul. So eventually they would have that aha moment and they would open up more to the truth. Well, through these reincarnations and through facing our afflictions and going through the healings and purifications, humans have come to a point on earth to where they're ready for the spirit of truth. And the spirit of truth has come. Gratefully, Allan Kardec answered the call, and the mediums at the time answered the call to work with the spirit of truth, to codify the books, to codify the gospel according to Spiritism, to help provide us what we can know more. Because Jesus, as Jesus spoke to them, he promised that the Consoler would come, the Spirit of Truth, to teach all things. And if to teach all things, that means Jesus hasn't taught us all things because we weren't ready for all things. We were ready for the baby steps that we needed first, the base, the solid foundation for everything else to come to be supported upon. And today we have Spiritism as the platform and the establishment for the Spirit of Truth to reside over, to share that truth, to bring the remembrance of Jesus's teachings and to add to provide a greater view, a higher point of view, to call us to observe the divine law, to teach us the divine law everything that we need to know in order to observe that divine law. And the spirit of truth and spiritism is enabling us to remember what Christ said and removes the veil so we can deeply understand it. Like the yolk, where I thought it was just the yellow of an egg that provides us nourishment. But no, it's the guide to show us the way. And when we turn left or when we turn right and we try to take control, there's the yoke to pull us just a little bit. We might receive a little affliction from it, but it's to awaken us again, to help us have that aha moment so that we can be centered again and follow that path that Jesus is trying to teach us. And if we follow that path, all of us have learned more about reincarnation and suffering and the purpose of it. The healing we receive from addressing it, to resigning to it, to have the courage, the strength to face it through service to others. And once we give in, surrender to this yoke, and we see the results in our lives, the blessings, more sustainable happiness, not only in our lives, but to others around us, because there is an affinity that occurs. When we're in that state of connection and educating us and loving our neighbor, more gravitate to it. And as we experience this and we see the results of it, our faith becomes stronger. Our doubt fades away. And our faith sooner or later becomes unshakable. All of us are at different degrees of faith, but we're all growing together to this unshakable faith by learning together, learning what the Spirit of Truth has to tell us, accepting the reins from the yoke, leading us so that we can see that higher point of view, because we've given ourselves through love and charity to our neighbor, to forgetting about our burden and then finding the answers to our burdens that solve our affliction or lessens our afflictions. Through all this education and all the results that we see and feel, and become to have a greater understanding truly of what the narrow path is that Jesus has laid down for us, and what the Spirit of Truth has painted the way for us through Spiritism. The earthly vicissitudes, we welcome them as blessings now. It's like, oh man, going through this tough thing, but you know what? There's a shining light through this. There's something that I can learn, because I know why I'm going through this. I know what the future will bring. I know if I sow this and that, this is what my future will bring. This splendid, beautiful horizon by following that narrow path. We all have our own experiences of following a narrow path. We all have our experiences of taking a left or to a right or backing up on that narrow path. And in doing so, we have all had our own experiences of trips and falls. And we have all had our own experiences of getting back up and walking forward on that narrow path. And then refocusing and having a greater understanding and a greater acceptance of what the Spirit of truth has unveiled for us. And each time that happens, we have a greater thirst for that knowledge, that education, that truth, and that service. We're no longer, does it seem like it did perhaps in the beginning, that to serve was a burden. Today, we serve because we love to. We understand the depth of love and what it provides when we let go and are selfless. And following the Spirit of truth, it helps us develop our virtues, turns our defects into virtues, allows the healing to occur, allow the purification to occur. And we begin to have more patience for whatever we're facing, big or small. And the more patience we have, perhaps what we face are bigger than what they are before, because God only puts before us what we can handle at that moment. To test us again, to keep us on that narrow path. And we stay that path by resigning to that yoke, those reins that are light, that can humble us, to remind us that we're no different from each other. We came from the same place. We came from God. We're going through the same evolution. We may have different experiences, but we're on that same path. And answering the call of the Spirit of truth more and more, we receive a greater courage to face everything, big or small. To help us continue on that path. The beautiful thing, Spiritism accomplishes what Jesus said about the promised consoler. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm sure these questions have been in your mind at one point, maybe a previous life, maybe in the beginning of your life, maybe even now. Where are they? Where we come from? Where are we going? And why are we on earth? And through Spiritism, we've learned that there are multiple worlds, but we're here because we're in the world of expiation, but we're also in the world that is in transition to a much more beautiful world, a world of regeneration. And we can go higher to another world, or we can go lower to another world. It all depends on how we accept this yoke, as the Spirit of truth tells us. Our load can be lightened. Our load can be soft, as Jesus says. We have that free will, a wonderful thing. All of us have that free will. And if we answer the call to truth, observe God's laws, our faith will become unbreakable. We will always have hope, even when others see no hope. We always see a flicker of the beauty, the flicker of the happiness that keeps us going, to keep us going forward. The latter part of this chapter, as most chapters in the Gospel according to Spiritism, is the Spirit's teaching, where they provide us a little more to think about. And these spirit teachings come from it's about the coming of the Spirit of the truth. And it is the Spirit of truth who is talking and talking through the mediums. And Allan Kardec captured it. This one is happened in Paris in 1860. And the Spirit of truth is reminding everyone came before Moses, Jesus, coming again to bring the truth and dissipate the darkness, removing that veil because we're ready for it. And Spirit is bringing remembrance to the immutable truth, the unshakable truth. And what is unshakable truth? It's truth that stands the test of time, like Jesus's teachings. If we follow that narrow path, we can awaken from being lost. And we know how to be lost ourselves, and through working with our mentors and helping spirits that are lost. And at first, maybe some of us may have questioned that as Spirit spoke to us and understanding how to speak with them. But Spiritism had taught us the book of mediumship is a great book. Heaven and Hell is a great book to understand the communication with Spirit and incarnate and discarnate life. And through our education and working with others, incarnate and discarnate, we've come out of the valley of darkness, and we've helped others come out of the valley of darkness. And we've done it enough to where we know that we are not making it up in our mind. It is actually truly occurring, that there is this two-way communication occurring with others within this world and on the other side. The Spirit of truth reminds us to believe. Believe in what you're learning. Believe in what you're experiencing. And love the experience. Love your neighbor. And always meditate upon the truth, so you can have that greater understanding and build upon that greater understanding. But most importantly, you have that knowledge. We all receive this knowledge, and knowledge is powerful. And we need to act on that knowledge as the divine law has showed us how to act. And when we don't, that means that we're trying to take control again. We're trying to take the reins of the yoke. We're going left or right from the narrow path, and we will have that affliction again, and we'll have to be reminded again to dissipate the darkness. The darkness that we have created. And Jesus always reminds us, and the Spirit of truth is reminding us, the yoke is light if we allow ourselves through our will to accept the reins of the guidance. First is the teaching. First teaching is love one another. Because we're supposed to do this together, not individually. We learn and grow together. And the second is, you must always educate ourselves. We always have to continue to do the work. We can't sit on the couch. We just can't have a microwave to live life. And work, the word work may seem heavy, but the more you give without expectations through the act of love for another, it no longer becomes work. It no longer seems like a duty. It just happens naturally. It can be hard to find the words to explain the bliss of that. But I know all of you have experienced that. So reflect on that experience. Feel it again. How wonderful it is. And we have a spirit of truth who spoke in Paris, 1861. He reminded the spirit of truth has now come to teach and console the disinherited poor. The ones who are ready to hear. Their eyes and their ears are open to the teachings because they're willing to resign to that reign connected to the yoke to lead us. It reminds us again that we have to do the work, and if we do the work, we will be supported. And the reward is that we get to remove ourselves, remove the affliction, to heal ourselves, to purify ourselves, to have a greater understanding of what it is to be human and our place, our connection to one another, to this world and beyond. Then there's the Spirit of Truth speaking, Paris, 1861, to remind us that the Spirit of Truth is the doctor of souls, bringing us the medicine to heal, reminding us of the way, showing us the way again. With brighter colors, so that we can see the way and hear how the way is explained through the education that's provided through the platform of Spiritism. And Jesus came, and the Spirit of Truth is coming and is here now to care for us, to help us. God wants us to be happy, to grow, to elevate ourselves from one world to the next, to heal, to purify. And through learning through the lessons of what Spiritism has to provide, listening to the Spirit of Truth, the truth that is unmutable, unchanging, stands the test of time through all our experiences, even when we want to go left or right from the narrow path. As we learn from Jesus and the Spirit of Truth. We become lighter. We're not consumed by the afflictions. What we find in this world, material things, will not provide us the true happiness, the blissfulness. They actually will provide us the afflictions if we focus too much on them, because we will not be centered in that narrow path. We will have deterred ourselves. Will have taken a detour. How many times have any of us wanted that one thing, and we had to go and get that one thing, and once we got that one thing, we wanted another, and then another, and another, because we wanted it better and better and better. Well, God and Jesus and the Spirit of Truth can remove that obsessiveness for more that seems endless. They can provide us happiness, to have patience, to be able to settle within ourselves, to find calmness, peace, tranquility, not chasing, but just being in the moment. The Spirit of Truth reminds us again, work, practice the divine law. If we don't practice the divine law, we go off to the left or to the right. And we do that through loving our neighbor. And when we're in the center or outside the center, use the one tool that we always have wherever we are. Pray. Pray. Pray will help us keep us in the center and connected to God, to Christ, to the Spirit of Truth. Because when we pray and we wish to connect, we're raising our affinity for just that. And then there's the Spirit of Truth, Paris 1863. Reminding us of God's reward if we follow that narrow path. We allow the reins to guide us that are connected to that yoke. We allow when Jesus pulls to the little to the left or to the little to the right to keep us on the center of the narrow path. To face temptation, to overcome it. The same with evil. When they both try to raise themselves up to deter us. By being guided, being humble, being patient, loving another, we have the strength to resign to that rein, to that yoke, through our devotion and self-denial to our neighbor. And in doing so, we're rewarded for the answers that we need for us to grow as a soul. And we're able to rest quiet. And we can continue to feel that tranquility if we perform God's dutiful request by always resigning to service. Now, the question for all of us should always be, am I on the narrow path? Or I should say, one of the questions when you do your reflection. How can I overcome this burden? What is this burden? And reminding ourselves to be in service. But if we feel as if we can't find the answer to how to be in service, to overcome that burden, to release that burden, remember, we always have prayer. Prayer to connect to that hand of Jesus and the Spirit of Truth. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I like that picture in the end. You know, the Spirit of Truth has always been one that kind of makes me quiver, you know, whenever I read passages by the Spirit of Truth. I don't know what it is about that, but it's just I don't know, something amazing to me. I guess my body is feeling the vibration of the words that from the passages, when I read them. But we can never hear enough, and it's always good to learn. And I wish there was something more that we could learn about some of these spirits that speak to us. It's not so much who they were in the body, but who they are as a spirit, and although they like being mysterious and, so that we don't fall into praising them and all that. I get it, but it just seems like to me it'd be more fun. I might not even be able to handle it. Who knows? But anyway, thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Regina.
Thank you, Brian. It was wonderful. I had the feeling I was kind of sitting back, that I was in the church. It was gorgeous. And I also really enjoyed the video, the simplicity of it. It's like understanding the saying with the yoke, because it gives us more clarity, right? 1, 2, 3. Praise, serve, and give it up to God. And if we just even practice that, that keeps us on the narrow path as well. So thank you so much. And then the Spirit of Truth, I kept being reminded of the United States Spiritist Federation. Luis Lima gave a talk on the truth will set you free, that Jesus said back then. And back then, that it's as true now as back then, right? And the truth he defined as a reference point, and the reference point is the moral teachings of Jesus. And it brings it all together, right? The Spirit of Truth is like we're following the moral teachings of Jesus in all of its details and in its simplicity, namely to love God above all else and your neighbor as yourself, right? So thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you talk about simplicity, and Luis Lima, he puts it in such simple terms for us to understand. It's beautiful. And it's, if you haven't had a chance to listen to him, any of you, I think majority of them perhaps have. And even if it's the same subject, it's still wonderful to listen to, because it seems like, just like Regina's saying, you want more, and he gives more. Because he opens himself up to the Spirit of Truth.
Yeah, he's refreshing. I totally agree. He's good.
And Brian, I think what you said today, for me, it was such a continuation of what we discussed last week about resting God, and kind of bringing that humility about like being humble and understand that we are just co-creators. And then when we truly give it to God, we understand what is our role, and then this creates purpose. And then when you were saying, I know what I'm going, I know what I'm doing. For me, it's I know the purpose. I'm serving God. And this is when faith kicks in, right? So I think that this just like connected for me so much about what we started talking last week, that I know it wasn't the starting point, but things connected really well for me. Thank you, brother. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, is there anyone else who would like to share their thoughts?
I can come through with something. There's a huge amount of valuable guidance that's there. Nobody doubts it. What occurs to me is I've got to leave out the distractions that prevent my humble level of awareness from picking the things that are really important, that really matter, instead of the things that are cute and silly and not worth spending any time on. Just go back to pray and express appreciation for the things that are going well, not be leading myself down areas of having no clue what's going on, and then turn and go, what happened? Where were you? Where was I? Thank you.
Yeah, Dave, that you just shared a lot of wisdom and such a small amount of time there. The Spiritism, the Spirit of Truth, has provided me the patience for my neighbor. And perhaps because of that, my neighbors have patience for me. Because there's so many people who have different thoughts and the state of affairs that we find ourselves in this world. And it's how they are, how they think. And it's not for me to judge, it's for me to accept. And the beautiful thing is when we put it into, we focus on really what's going to help us grow rather than these material things that just kind of what we want and they don't serve any purpose to it, or the misinformation that we know that's out there, and we allow ourselves to get confused, and we lose the opportunity for this greater knowledge of spirit, what Spiritism and the Spirit of Truth have to provide us. I feel like I'm going in circles, so I'm just going to be quiet and listen to anybody else who wants to talk.
All right, so we want to say thank you for each of you that shared and opened your heart with us today. Dear brother Brian, what a beautiful message of hope, faith, support. It was absolutely lovely, and also for your availability. So with that said, it's time to pass to our second part of the service, the healing passes. So I know we do take a little small break, and also to go and grab our water. So I don't know, how much do we want to give Sister Kiki? 2 minutes. So we got 2 minutes. You can do a lot in 2 minutes. A teacher, 2 minutes, it's a lot of time. Just kidding. All right.